Vivian Heidi from House of Heidi, and welcome to Archive.exe. Today we're talking about the JFK UFO Memo. So this is in our conspiracy category because we're not sure if this is actually true or not. And it happened November 12th, 1963. And if you know your JFK lore, then you'll know this is only a few days before JFK was assassinated. So let's get into it because this stuff is pretty darn crazy. So just a little bit of background on John F. Kennedy in case, you're born under a rock and you don't know who he is or you just need a little refresher. He's my personal favorite president, as I'm sure a lot of people's favorite presidents. And let's just read a little bit about him. He is our 35th president of the United States. He served from 1961 to 1963. He was born on May 29th, 1917 in Brooklyn, Massachusetts. He was a decorated U.S. Navy veteran who served in World War II. He was elected president at just 43 years old, making him the youngest president ever elected to the office, which I think is pretty darn cool. He led the nation through major Cold War events, including the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the beginning of the Apollo moon program. He's known for his vision of space exploration, public service, and his famous call to ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And he also started the Peace Corps, which I love because I served in the Peace Corps a few years ago. And I just love that he started the Peace Corps. It's amazing. Um, and unfortunately, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963, while riding in a presidential motorcade. His death remains one of the most investigated and debated events in American history. So we're not going to talk too much about the assassination in this video. I definitely will in later videos down the road. This is more just about this UFO memo. So the John F. Kennedy UFO memo. It was one of the most controversial UFO documents ever released. It was allegedly written just 10 days before President John F. Kennedy's assassination, and it claims that JFK demanded access to classified UFO intelligence. Now, I'm saying claims because we don't know for sure if this is a real memo, like a real document or not. There's disputes on that, which we'll get into. But if it is real, he was asking for access to this classified UFO intelligence from the CIA. Some believe it reveals why he was killed, and others say it's an obvious fake. So we're going to get into that today. So our timeline entry is November 12th, 1963. Just like I said, just 10 days before JFK's assassination. It was sent, and if this is true, it was sent from President Kennedy to the CIA director at the time, John McCone. And it bears the subject line, which we'll see the actual memo in a second, but it bears the subject line, classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security, which is just crazy. Like nowadays we know that the government released stuff about UFOs and everything, but back then it was such a secret. So the fact that all of this is even a possibility is just crazy to me. I love it. It's so much fun. Um, it instructs the CIA to review UFO-related intelligence and separate known military activity from truly unexplained cases. And it requests that selected information be also shared with NASA. And ends by asking the CIA to respond by February 1st, 1964, which, as we all know, unfortunately, he wouldn't make it to that time, of course, if this is even a real memo, but we'll get into that. So I think it's quite strange that he was also asking it to be shared with NASA. I mean, it makes sense though that he would want, all this information about UFOs to be shared with NASA with with the program that's like focused on space. So that totally makes sense. And I think if this is true, I think it's a really smart idea of Kennedy to do. So the memo's stated purpose to reduce the risk of Cold War misunderstandings because he wanted to prevent Soviet forces. Remember, this is during the Cold War. He wanted to prevent Soviet forces from mistaking UFO sightings for secret American weapons. So if they shared, the information with each other with the Soviet, like America and the Soviets shared this information, there would be no kind of misunderstandings and stuff like that. Plus, they could pool their resources together. and improve communication between intelligence agencies and NASA. So, not just with the Soviets and America, but also NASA itself and the CIA. And notoriously, the CIA is known to not want to share information with other agencies. So, I'm sure if this is true, I'm sure they had a big problem with this, of course. And to also help distinguish unidentified aerial objects from classified aircraft, just so there's no misunderstandings with what's a UFO and what's not, and to support safer international cooperation in space exploration. So I think, honestly, I think this was all a really good plan of JFK's. So the one line that everyone talks about in this is, so let's just talk a little bit about it. The memo refers to unidentified objects as unknowns. So JFK allegedly asked the CIA to review all intelligence on these unknowns. So he doesn't call them UFOs, he calls them unknowns. To determine which sightings involve classified U.S. technology, so maybe some of it is actually from the U.S., and to share remaining information with NASA. So he even like specified like the CIA didn't need to share the classified information about like their own stuff, just the stuff that they don't know what it is. So that makes sense. JFK was thinking. This wording has fueled decades of speculation that JFK believed there were genuinely unexplained aerial phenomena. So not just military stuff. He thought there was like real stuff going on, like real UFO stuff. But the memo never used the phrase alien spacecraft. Instead, it repeatedly refers to unknowns, a vague term that could mean anything from radar anomalies to unexplained aerial sightings, like UFOs. So the man receiving the memo, he was the director of the CIA from 1961 to 1965. He oversaw intelligence operations during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was responsible for some of America's most closely guarded secrets at the time. And if the memo is authentic, McCone would have been the official tasked with responding to the memo. But there are no verified records showing that he ever did or that the CIA ever got this memo to begin with. And let's talk a little more about why NASA is mentioned. So JFK wanted America to land on the moon before the Soviet Union. Like this was a big thing that he really, really wanted to do. He's the one that like inspired the whole race to the moon thing and the whole space program in general. He also proposed future U.S. Soviet cooperation in space, which I think is pretty darn cool. Like to put aside your differences and focus on getting into space and exploring. I think that's pretty cool. The memo suggests NASA should receive information about certain unidentified objects. Supporters say this shows JFK favors scientific transparency, which I agree with as well. But skeptics argue it simply fits the historical context of the space race. So the skeptics are saying he just wanted, if the memo is even real, he just wanted this information to be shared to get to the moon before Russia or before the Soviet Union. But I like to believe that he was doing it because he just wants, like I said, scientific transparency, to just help humanity as a whole. So, did the CIA respond? There are no verified CIA responses that have ever been found. No authenticated follow up documents have ever surfaced. No official record confirms the memo was ever received. This absence has been one of the biggest arguments in the debate, and without a confirmed paper trail, the memo remains impossible to verify. And the whole thing is, I don't know if I included this in the slides, but the whole thing with the memo is it surfaced in oh goodness, I forget exactly what year, but quite recently, like within the past like couple decades, in the 2000s, it surfaced this guy was writing a book about JFK and he found this memo. So, I mean, I might mention it later. So I don't really know. I mean, he just found this memo. So there's really no like verified sources, and the memo's not in any like people thought it might be in the recently like from last year the declassified documents. They thought maybe it would be in there. It's not. So either it's just a complete hoax, which I don't know. I don't want to believe that because the guy that found it, um, he's a respected author and everything, respected historian. So I don't think he would purposely forge anything. I think that's be silly. So I personally think it's real. And maybe the CIA is the CIA. So obviously they have ways to hide things, but who knows? Who knows? So there's no verified sources for any of this. But um So, the document that divides. UFO researchers cite it as evidence that JFK sought classified information, but most historians point out the lack of verifiable evidence. Document experts question whether it matches authentic White House records from 1963, and this is a big thing. Like there's certain things apparently in on the document that doesn't quite match up with documents from that time period. So that is a case, a good case to be had. So that might be proof that it might not be real. And again, I'm not even saying that the author that found this and stuff is the one that fabricated it. Maybe he found it and someone else had made it. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But because there is no original authenticated copy, it cannot currently be treated as historical facts. Today, it's considered an unverified document that continues to fuel debate rather than settle it. So I do. It's quite interesting, So I mean, and there are. I mean, and it's not like there aren't secrets that the CIA and governments hide, So it's quite interesting to think about. And this here is the actual document in question. As you can see up top, it says they're top secret, and there's some stuff, blacked out. November 12th, 1963, just a few days before he was assassinated. And for some reason, they blacked out the name of the director. I don't know why. Like, people know who the director was at the time, but whatever. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security. And he says, as I had discussed with you previously, I have initiated something and have instructed James Webb to develop a program with the Soviet Union in a joint space and lunar exploration. It would be very helpful if you would have the high threat cases reviewed with the purpose of identification of bona fide as opposed to classified. Oh, okay. Of bona fide as opposed to classified CIA sources. It is important that we make a clear distinction between the knowns and unknowns in the event the Soviets try to mistake our extended cooperation as a cover for intelligence gathering of their defense and space programs. So honestly, it all makes sense that he would want this to happen. It makes like logical sense, and it shows that if this is true, that JFK was a good leader and was like thinking of things, because it makes sense. With this data, when this data has been sorted out, I would like you to arrange a program of data sharing with NASA where unknowns, and unknowns is capitalized here, where unknowns are a factor. This will help NASA mission directors in their defense responsibilities. I would like an interim report on the data review no later than February 1st, 1964. Signed, John F. Kennedy. So if this is true, that's pretty darn crazy, asking for information on the unknowns and literally UFO intelligence. And it makes sense. I personally would like to believe it's true, not only because it just makes sense, but also it's just fun to believe in conspiracies sometimes. So this honestly does make sense to me. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Was JFK killed because of the memo? As we know, he was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. The alleged UFO memo is dated 10 days earlier, and this timing has sparked decades of speculation. Some theorists argue the memo threatened deeply classified programs, but no verified evidence has ever linked the memo to the assassination. And there's a lot, to go in that. I personally think that if this memo is real, I personally think maybe it's just like added on, like there's there was probably a lot of reasons of why whoever wanted him assassinated. So there, I don't think it was just because of one little memo. But if the memo is real and whatever, it could be, a thing that's just like another thing. So who knows? Who knows? So was he a president asking too many questions? After the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, JFK reportedly became distrustful of the CIA. He reduced the agency's influence and replaced CIA Director Alan Dulles. Some conspiracy theorists believe intelligence officials viewed him as unpredictable. In this theory, requesting access to highly classified UFO files crossed a line. But again, historians have found no documentary evidence supporting this claim. This is just another theory, but a very good theory in my opinion. the document that fueled the theory. So there is another memo, another document, okay, about UFO stuff called the Burned Memo. And this one's quite interesting as well. Crazy, crazy, crazy. This one came out or surfaced in 1999. It came from an anonymous former CIA employee surfacing in 1999. It refers to JFK by Secret Service codename Lancer. It claims that Lancer was asking questions about activities which we cannot allow. This memo has never been authenticated and, of course, is widely disputed, but it's so exciting and like interesting to read about, though. Like, oh, I love it. I love it. So interesting. And this is the actual memo, the burned memo. Goodness, it's just so like I love spy stuff. It's just so much fun and if it's actually real too, that'd be crazy. But it says from the Director of Central Intelligence, Top Secret MJ12, in the context of the above, it has become necessary to review and evaluate duplication of field activities in light of the current situation. To eliminate this problem, I have drafted new directives for your review and consideration. Please evaluate each draft on its own merit with the goal of finding acceptable solutions in which all can agree on. As you must know, Lancer, JFK, has made some inquiries regarding our activities which we cannot allow. If this is true, that's crazy. Please submit your views no later than October. Your action to this matter is critical to the continuance of this group. That is crazy. If this is real, what? You're talking about our president like that? Which we cannot allow. That's crazy. Oh my God. Wow. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. I definitely want to dive more into this too. I knew like I kind of knew like the gist of it, but I never really dived into it before, and it's crazy, it's so crazy. And so, the secret committee theory. Some believe that a covert group called Majestic 12 managed recovered UFO technology. According to the theory, JFK wanted access to the files. Supporters argue this would have threatened decades of secrecy. Critics note there is no credible evidence that Majestic 12 ever existed. They're just no fun. They're no fun. They don't want to believe. Most experts consider the documents tied to MJ12 to be fabricated. So it could, it could very easily be fabricated, or it could be true. Who knows? Who knows? But this is what historians say, like the established fact of it all. There's no verified evidence connecting JFK's assassination to UFOs, and even if it was somehow connected and the memo was real, I don't think he was assassinated just because of that memo. Anyways, you know what I mean? The multiple official investigations concluded that the UFO theory is unsupported. The alleged memo has never been authenticated by the U.S. government, but again, why would the U.S. government authenticate that? Like they're the ones that anyways. Most historians believe the theory is built on coincidence, speculation, and disputed documents. And again, that's true. Like, I love a good conspiracy, but I do think that looking at everything through a lens of like actual fact and like history is important and stuff. And again, it could all just be coincidence, and a lot of this fueled by speculation. So you never know. You never know. Even many UFO researchers remain skeptical of the assassination connection. Again, I as well, I don't think he was, if it is true, I don't think he was assassinated just because of the memo. It's just another thing added on. So, what the conspiracies say, though, is the timing of the memo and JFK's death is undeniably striking. If this memo is real, that is quite strange that it was only 10 days before he was assassinated. It's like if it is real, it's like the cherry on top, just boom. Who knows? Who knows? But the government secrecy surrounding intelligence programs has fueled speculation for decades. Every new release of UAP or classified records, like the ones from last year, revives interest in the theory. And again, there's literally nothing on the memo from the declassified documents, unfortunately. For believers, the memo hints at a hidden motive. Who knows? Who knows? So, what really happened? The alleged JFK UFO memo has never been conclusively authenticated. No verified evidence links it to President Kennedy's assassination, yet its timing and the secrecy surrounding intelligence agencies has kept the theory alive for decades. Whether it's a genuine document, an elaborate forgery, or deliberate disinformation, ooh, that could be a possibility as well. Who knows? Who knows? Or deliberate disinformation remains unresolved. More than 60 years later, it continues to blur the lines between history, conspiracy, and mystery. My three favorite things: history, conspiracy, and mystery. This has been Archive.exe with your host, Vivian Heidi from House of Heidi. File name JFK UFO Memo. Status, I have a typo there. Statuses unresolved. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to have a bunch more JFK content. I love researching JFK. It's like my special interest. So be prepared for a lot more John F. Kennedy conspiracies and Cold War conspiracies and all of that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.